fellow cinema enthusiasts, my name is Christina, and welcome to another Let's Get Reelz movie review. Today is Classic Movie Thursdays here on my channel, my version of Throwback Thursdays. Today's classic movie I will be reviewing for you is To Be or Not to Be from 1942. To Be or Not to Be starts off in Warsaw in August of 1939, 1 month before the Nazi invasion of Poland and the beginning of World War II. So it focuses on a theater group, and the theater is led by Joseph Tura, who is played by Jack Benny, and his wife Maria Tura, played by Carole Lombard. The theater is planning on a production of some kind of thing with Hitler and the Nazis, some kind of story with them, and they can't do that because then the Nazis start coming in not too long after this, so they do Hamlet. And Maria actually met a young Polish soldier, and she tells him, oh, come back and see me when Joseph does the soliloquy for Hamlet, to be or not to be. As soon as he says it, come backstage. So the soldier does, but he does it, he's like in the middle of the aisle, and he gets up in the middle of Hamlet's soliloquy, and Joseph is furious, like he cannot believe that somebody got up during the middle of his soliloquy. Like, he just thinks that's so rude, and he just freaks out. So the soldier goes back to see Maria, and she is just like fawning all over him because the guy is giving her attention, and he's young and he's very, very handsome. But he's like a huge fan. He reads about her all the time in the papers, and he's asking her, he's like, oh, how's your goldfish? How's your farm? And she's like, what the frick are you talking about? Then he asked her, he's like, oh, come up in my plane. I would love to take you up in my plane. And then soon he's like, I'm going to talk to your husband so that we can be together. We're obviously meant to be together. And she's like, no, that's not gonna happen. So with the invasion of the Nazis into Poland, the theater closes, and they really don't have anything to do. The theater can't go on, the actors can't go on. So Maria becomes part of the underground movement to fight against the Nazis. And the soldier is with a group of Polish soldiers fighting in England and trying to, fight the war against the Nazis through the RAF. And there is a Professor Zelensky who is in England, and he's talking to the soldiers, and he's kind of been like a morale booster. But one day he's like, oh, I think I'm going back to Warsaw, please give me your letters, where your family lives. And the soldier mentions to Professor Zelensky about Maria and Joseph, and Zelensky's like, I've never heard of Joseph and Maria Tura. So the soldier finds that odd that, this professor's supposed to be in Warsaw, and he's never ever heard of these two actors who you couldn't go anywhere in Warsaw without hearing about. There's something hinky going on there. So they're like, oh my god, what if he's a spy and you guys gave him all these letters and everything? What are you thinking? So they have the soldier go into Warsaw, they fly him in and drop him in, and then Maria has been given a picture of Zelensky somehow, and she puts it in a bookshop and all this stuff. So it kind of becomes like this little covert thing, and of course it just starts to become absolutely hysterical because the theater company starts getting involved to try and get Maria out of the clutches of Professor Zelensky. And honestly, I'm not even gonna tell you the rest of it, because if I start giving you a summary of that, your brain is probably just gonna and I don't want to do that because the story is really, really funny, and it just involves a whole theater company pretending to be Nazis, and they do get to escape Poland, and the middle of it, just them being the Nazis, and oh my god, it's just crazy. It's so funny. This was directed by Ernst Lubitsch, so of course it's gonna be crazy, but with a little bit of heart and just absolute hilarity. And you have Carole Lombard, who was such a great comedic actress, but she also was like really good at doing some dramatic stuff. I mean, there's not too much dramatic things in here, but she was just such a great actress, and unfortunately this was her last role she made before she died in a plane crash while she was on a war bonds tour. And it's really sad, not just because this was Lombard's last movie, it's sad because you can see her career was maybe starting to go in a little bit of a different direction. Like, of course she was known for her comedies, she was excellent in that. If you've never seen any of her comedies, just look up 20th Century with John Barrymore or Hitchcock's Mr. and Mrs. Smith. She was very good, and you could tell she just wasn't afraid to be silly. But I feel like in To Be or Not to Be, she was headed in a little bit more of a serious side to her acting. I'm not going to say dramatic, but a little bit more serious. And who knows what kind of movies she could have made. And that is what's so sad, I think, about knowing that To Be or Not to Be was Lombard's last movie, is that you can see her career was starting to go in a little bit of a different direction. Jack Benny, this was the first movie I've ever seen him in, and he was freaking funny. He was like the perfect ham of an actor who's so full of himself. I loved it. I like him. The dialogue is really silly. There's one part in it that I always crack up with, and I'm like, how on earth did they get away with this? Maria is kind of like yelling at Joseph, if I go on a diet, you lose the weight. If I do this, you do this. And if we were to have a baby, I'm not sure I'd be the mother. And then Joseph goes, well, I'd be lucky enough just to be the father, something like that. I'm like, how did that get passed? It was great. I always love that scene, and like, there's just so many other great scenes in this movie. If you have never seen To Be or Not to Be, I really hope that you go find To Be or Not to Be, and then you watch it and you enjoy it. It's one of Ernst Lubitsch's greatest movies, one of my favorite of his, one of my favorite of Carole Lombard's, and just a movie I can enjoy over and over again. Maybe you guys might be familiar with Mel Brooks movies if you've never seen To Be or Not to Be and you're thinking, why does this sound so familiar? Mel Brooks did a remake of To Be or Not to Be in the 80s, and his is just as hysterical. I will maybe review that sometime soon because I really enjoyed it. And of course, you know, Mel Brooks is crazy and he put his own touch. So like, there was a thing called the Lubitsch touch. Well, there's the Brooks touch on his version. So that was my review of To Be or Not to Be. If you like this review in any way, please give it a thumbs up. Leave your comments down below. If you have seen To Be or Not to Be, we can discuss Carole Lombard, anything about her, Jack Benny. I'd really like to see more of Jack Benny's films, so if you know any, please leave those there as well. Or we can talk about Ernst Lubitsch, whatever you want. Also in the comments, if you have any suggestions of what I should watch, be them classic movies or newer movies, leave those there. And if I pick your movie and I watch it and I review it, I will give you a shout out. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button for future Classic Movie Thursdays and other movie reviews, because that is what I like to do here. And as always, keep watching movies and stay absolutely fabulous.